Book 16 of 2019 was The Other Side of Happiness by Bastian. This book was really interesting because it's talking about pain and how pain actually is kind of not recognised as being as beneficial as it is. It starts talking about how as a society we're trying to avoid pain all the time. When we say pain, we're talking about physical pain, so you know, pain that when our bodies like hurt, but also social pain. And we find a lot in society today where more and more people are suffering from mental illness, depression, and the solution to that is to take a pill to try and, you know, immediately get rid of that pain. You know, if we have some pain, we take a paracetamol. If we have some social pain, we take an antidepressant. Like, we're just kind of constantly trying to medicate ourselves away from the pain. And what Bastian is suggesting is that actually by doing that, you are having detrimental impacts on yourself, because pain is actually, and it's quite useful for you, and is a way for you to adapt to your surroundings in an adaptive way. So it's beneficial for you to have some kind of pain in your life. He talks a lot about how the cotton wool generation, so the generation where we've got lots of health and safety, we're trying to, you know, protect our children from like a scratched knee and stuff like that. You know, there's those memes on Facebook, isn't there, where it's like when your like legs hanging off and the dinner lady says put a blue paper towel on it, wet paper towel on it. Like, that's how we grew up and we were fine. Like, but you've got kids today who aren't kind of experiencing life like that, who aren't falling off the top of slides and, you know, damaging themselves because we're wrapping them up in cotton wool. And we have what's like now helicopter parenting, where the parents are always hovering over the children, so they don't have that kind of independence and that ability to do things on their own. So we get now a lot of kind of teenagers who don't want to try anything in case they fail, because they've never had to try something and fail at it. They've never had to experience that pain of it not working out. Or, you know, if, you know, I remember when I was a kid, one of my friends climbed a tree and she fell out of the tree. Now this tree was massive, like bigger than a house. She fell out and landed on her back, and she was fine, but she probably didn't do it again. And like, she learned from that some risks are a bit too much to take, but like she could handle it and she was fine, and that's probably served her well in life. But if you've never experienced anything like that when you were younger, then you don't really have that adaptive response to be like, yeah, I've got this, I can do this, I've experienced something like this in the past, and I can learn from that and be better at it. So it kind of, by not giving yourself those opportunities to suffer pain in like little bits, you can't then deal with the big stuff that happens that is quite painful. So Bastian compares it to when you get like immunised. So you have a little bit of the disease that's been frozen so that it's not as active, so that your body builds like resistance to it, antibodies to it, so that if that pain comes again in full force, like your body can respond to it and react to it. And it's almost like trying to think of it as you need a little bit of pain as you're growing up, both physical and social, to immunise yourself against the pain that'll come later on that is worse. It's almost like if you don't kind of put yourself through that little bit of pain as you're growing up, then when the big pain comes, you can't deal with it, you break down, you're helpless, you can't do anything, you just completely break down in terms of not being able to function. And then that's why we have lots of mental illness, because you just didn't have that resistance as you were growing up, so that now something bad has happened to you, you don't know what to do with it, you don't know how to deal with that. And Bastian's not just like philosophising over this and not just kind of like, you know, theorising about it. He's actually a pain researcher. He's done lots of studies where he induces pain in participants, so he uses lots of ice buckets because it's not damaging long term, but in the short term it is quite painful to put your hand in ice for a long time. So he does a lot of pain research and has found like that actually being in pain and having pain has benefits to you. So he kind of talks a little bit about how when we do something pleasurable and we do it over and over and over again, the pleasure extinguishes itself eventually, so that it actually becomes less pleasurable the more times we do it. And actually the after effect is that it's more unpleasant afterwards. So say, I don't know, you like eating chocolate cake, you eat some chocolate cake, and then afterwards you might feel a little bit like, oh, I probably shouldn't have had that much chocolate cake. The more that you do that, you get less pleasure from the chocolate cake, you need to have more of it, which is, you know, explaining why addiction happens, because you need more of something to get the same effect from it, the same release of dopamine from it. But the after effects get worse. Now, on the flip side, if you do something painful repetitively, if you do it multiple times, with each time it gets less painful, but the after effects of it become more pleasurable. So the relief from it and the feelings after it become more pleasurable. So it's almost like, I'm doing it like that because it's on a graph. So it's like it's pleasure like this, and then pain like this, and then pleasure like this. But then the pleasure goes like lower, and then the pain goes lower, and then the pleasure goes even deeper. So it's better. That was a really rough explanation, but I was thinking of something else while I was doing it. I was really distracted. But anyway, so it's almost like comparing, because I was thinking of showering and running and what was I going to say next. So it was basically comparing, imagine like a really, really cold shower. The very, very first time you have a cold shower, now I mean like a cold shower like for at least 3 minutes in the freezing cold, it's like it takes your breath away, you're like, oh, it's really, really cold. But then the relief afterwards is quite pleasurable. Similarly, if you go for a run, it's horrific when you first go, but then afterwards it feels kind of pleasurable. And he kind of talks as well about the, I think it's opioids that get released that are quite high afterwards, that explain things like runner's high and stuff. So your brain is responding to that pain. It's all because basically these opioids, I don't know if that's how you say it, they're kind of like a natural kind of pain relief. So because you're in pain, it's releasing that, and then obviously when you stop, you're still releasing it. The after effects of it are really good, which is why you get things like runner's high. But the more that you have a cold shower, the less painful it gets, because you know you're used to it. And actually the pleasure after it gets even more, gets greater, and same with running as well, which is why things like running get very addictive, because you feel great afterwards and the pain's not as much because you've done it so many times. So he was talking about that, and then what else was he talking about? Oh, it kind of made me think as well about, I don't know if you've read Brave New World by Huxley, which is like a dystopian novel written in the 30s, which is amazing in terms of what it makes you think about. There, like, nobody suffers any pain, they just take pills, and then, you know, they're absolutely like happy as anything. But they all feel really unfulfilled, and it's like life without pain. And if it, you know, if everything was just pleasurable, it would be boring. It would be really boring. It would be really kind of like, you know, like it'd be pleasurable for a tiny amount of time, but then you'd get bored. Like, you need the juxtaposition of pain and struggle and pleasure to actually feel the pleasure more intensely. Otherwise it gets kind of like dull and kind of, you know, not as satisfying. So you kind of need that bit of pain. You know, everything always feels better when you've had a bit of struggle to get there. Like if someone just hands you like an achievement, it's not as fulfilling. Whereas if you've worked really hard for it and you've struggled and pained for it, like it becomes more pleasurable. And it's because of the way that your brain is and the way that your brain works that's the reason that's happening. What else does he talk about? He also talks about like there are countries where, you know, life is a struggle. Like they don't even have running water. Like they have to go for miles to get water. You know, that they're getting like sexually and physically abused, you know, constantly. Like their life is horrific. They have a lot of pain, but yet in comparison to other countries, they report feeling like their lives are more meaningful, that they have more meaning in their lives. So it's almost like pain and struggle makes a more meaningful life. So if you're feeling kind of empty and unfulfilled and your life is great, like it's pleasurable or whatever, then this is why. It's because there's not enough pain in your life. And this could explain why so many people have got mental health issues and depression or whatever, because we are living in a kind of utopia in that everything's, you know, peachy, everything's great. Like you can eat when you want, you can eat really nice food, you can, you know, go and wash and shower when you want, you can you know, go away and do things that you enjoy doing. You work, but it's not really tiresome on you that much in terms of physically like it used to be back in the day. Obviously you have a manual job and that doesn't count, But like, life is quite peachy and easy. Like, you're not having to struggle that much in life to get by. Whereas, like, you know, you have everything that you want, but yet you're not happy. Why is that? And it's because there's no struggle, there's no pain in your life. Like, you need some struggle, some pain, something there to make you kind of almost like appreciate what's going on. Brock Bastian gives an example of, they were hiking for like days and they were really, you know, smelling and sweaty and hadn't washed and stuff. And they came to like a place that offered them beer and, you know, sitting around the fire and stuff. And they said that it was the most nice, pleasurable, you know, feeling that they've ever had. But actually, when they look back on it, the beer was warm and, you know, it wasn't really that amazing, but it was the juxtaposition between the fact that they'd been walking for days and they were knackered and they were thirsty and whatever that made the warm beer so amazing. And it was like, it's that juxtaposition between things that makes something more pleasurable and more enjoyable. So essentially, like, but Bastian is saying, you need to embrace pain. Like, when there's pain in your life, it's not a bad thing. Like, we're kind of almost kind of conditioned now to escape it, to try to run away from it, to avoid it, to think that there's a problem with us if we're experiencing some pain, when in actual fact, like, the pain is good for you. He talks as well about how pain focuses us and makes us kind of pay attention to certain things, and I think that's very true. Like, when you're in pain, you are kind of like almost tuned into what's going on. He also has done studies where if you're in pain, you are more likely to be charitable. So, you know, when somebody's like, you know, raise money for charity or whatever, if that person is doing something like, you know, a half marathon compared to just baking cakes and selling them, people will be more charitable towards the running a half marathon, because there's pain involved there. It's, you know, achieving something to get that kind of outcome, so people are more likely to be charitable towards it. It also talks about like the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. They actually found that people that did the Ice Bucket Challenge, the charitable donations were, you know, larger because people were suffering from the Ice Bucket Challenge. So it's like almost as if being in pain makes you more charitable, it makes you more empathetic with other people. They've done other studies where if the person's been in pain compared to if they've not, would they be more likely to be cooperative in a kind of game, and they are more cooperative when they're in pain. So it's almost like if we start taking tablets and getting rid of our pain, we will become more self-centered and we will become less empathetic and less charitable and kind of more taking care of ourselves and of other people. So actually pain is good for us. It's good for us individually because it focuses us more, it allows things to be more pleasurable for us, and it's good for society because it helps us be better people. So if you're in pain, it's fine. Like, it's good for you. It's your brain's way of adapting to situations so that you know, there's the saying in philosophy, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and it does. It totally does. So embrace your pain. Pain is good for you. Stop avoiding it. Stop popping pills to get rid of it. Aside from that, they also found, I was going to start then and then I thought of something else. They found that when you take paracetamol, it gets rid of your social pain in a similar way to what it does to get rid of physical pain, but it also makes you less empathetic and it makes you less cooperative and it makes you less able to kind of understand what's going on around you in a social sense. So you can numb yourself to everything that's going on around you, to pain and whatever, but you're not adapting and you're not getting better as a person and you're not going to get rid of the pain, and you won't want to anyway because pain's really good for you. So embrace your pain, it's good for you.